Okay, y'all, welcome back to another episode of Fat Daddy Eats. You've seen me make redneck bread. Now we're gonna make kind of a mixture between French bread and what they call baguettes over there in France. I've looked at different recipes, I've played with it. This is about my fourth attempt at making this stuff. I'm gonna show you how I make what we're gonna have as good bread for tomorrow's meal. So first I start off, this is 4 3/4 cups of bread flour. I didn't even realize they made bread flour, but they by God do. Bread flour is something you can get, go to the grocery store, read your labels, make sure you're getting what you're after. This is a teaspoon of salt. I'm putting that in that 4 3/4, and I'm going to put, because my taste buds are a little different from what I've seen a lot of folks, I'm going to put just a smidge more, because that's just how I rock it. I've got a tablespoon and some change of salt. Then I'm going to find my half teaspoon right there, and I'm going to put some garlic powder in there. So I got some garlic powder in there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix this in some. So it's not just a glob of salt and garlic powder. I'm going to go ahead and get that mixed in to that 4 3/4 cups of bread flour. Set that off to the side. Lock that in. Now, here is what has to get done to make all of this work. I'm going to get some sugar and some water and get that tap water heated up, put some sugar in there, stir it in, wait. Then we're going to see, when I get my temp right, I'm going to add yeast. Okay, so what typically our water temp, as you can hear, I've got my tap running, is hot. I'm going to go ahead and put 2 cups of water in this measuring cup. I'm going to look at my temperature, because like I said, our tap water is pretty warm. And when I look at this temp, I'm looking at 135 degrees. That is way too hot to put yeast in. If you put yeast in 135 degree water, you're going to kill the yeast. However, you can go ahead and put 2 teaspoons of sugar in there. So when I put the yeast in there, the yeast has something to latch onto and start activating. So I'm going to get me a spoon out and go ahead and dissolve that sugar into that water. So what I'm pretty much going to be waiting on is this temperature to come down enough for me to add 2 packages of instant yeast. And you get this at the grocery store. It's instant yeast. But you don't want to add that yeast until the water temperature comes down below 110 degrees. 100 to 110 degrees is the magic number for your yeast. You stir that in, which you're about to see. Wait for it to start activating. Once you see that it is actually activated, we're going to add it into our mixture of bread flour, salt, and a little bit of garlic powder, and we're going to make a dough ball. So just hang tight. We've got to get through and let this water cool down. Okay, so here's the deal. We are waiting on this water temp to cool down. I'm at 120 degrees. I've stirred in the sugar. The sugar is completely dissolved into the water. But if I added that yeast into 120 degree water, it would kill the yeast. Yeast is a living organism. So you never want to add yeast into water higher than 110 degrees Fahrenheit. So I'm waiting for this to come down, and I'm now at 119 and change. So that's what we're waiting on to make this complete. Come on, 119.1, 119.3. So here's the deal. What I'm doing now, because the tap water was so hot in the house, I'm waiting on the tap water to cool down to below 110 degrees. 108 degrees is my magic number to add the yeast to. And I'm sitting here looking at 117 degrees Fahrenheit. The reason you don't want to add my yeast before it gets to under 110 degrees is you will kill the yeast. Yeast is a living organism. The stirred in sugar into the water gives the yeast something to eat once it hits it. And you're going to see the reaction once I get the temperature right. I'm going to stir in the yeast and you will see what I'm looking for to make good bread. We have finally got this water temp down below 110 degrees. 100 to 110 degrees will set your yeast at its full max, what it's going to do. As this has been cooling down, because when I put the tap water in, it was like 130 degrees. It has cooled down to 109 degrees now. So I can add yeast safely and not kill it. In between all the time that you have not seen is I've been stirring in the 2 teaspoons of sugar that I put in that water. So there's 2 cups of water, 2 teaspoons of sugar. I'm at 108 degrees and 9/10. So I am ready to go with my yeast. I'm going to put in 1 package and stir that in and try to bust up the clumps if there are any. And look how it turned that water cloudy. We're going to put in the second package. And these packages have 2¼ teaspoons of yeast. So I've added 4½ teaspoons of yeast in doing this. And I stir that in. And what I like to do is watch to make sure it foams up the way that I want it to before I add it to my flour. I want to make sure that the yeast is active and is actively eating the sugars that are in that water. Let me give it a minute or two to see how that reacts. But I'm telling you right now, looking at this, I'm going to be able to stir this into my bread flour, salt, garlic powder mixture with no regrets. This is going to make a good base. I have a stand mixer that I'm putting this down and I'm turning it on its lowest setting and adding all of this liquid into my bowl to make a dough ball. And I put it on the lowest setting so that it can grab what it's going to grab. As this dough ball gets bigger and bigger, it is grabbing up the flour that's on the edges. But because I bought, I'm gonna go ahead and stir in some of this flour to make sure that ball gets big. The dough hook is working. That's what I've got going on here is a dough hook. I'm fixing to move this tripod to let y'all see what's going on. Alright, so this is what's going on in the bowl right now. And what I'm doing is I'm pulling the flour from the edges and making that dough ball get hooked up into that dough hook. I'm going to speed it up. And you see I've got this spoon working in there. I'm making my dough ball bigger and bigger. The idea is not to add water. I'm wanting to make this ball without adding a whole bunch of water, because water makes it a big, wet, messy, sticky mess. But I'm wanting to get all the ingredients mixed together. And if you notice, all the dough is pulled off the side of the bowl. It's all right there on the dough hook. So what you're going to see next is me prepping that and making that our bread. I've turned this bad boy off. Dough hook comes out relatively clean. That's all that's left. I've got this big ball of dough that I am fixing to put into this bowl that I have already put some oil spray in to make sure that the dough doesn't stick to it. So I put that right there. I take a dish towel and cover once. I take a second dish towel and cover twice. And then I set a timer for 45 minutes because what we're trying to do now is rise our dough. This has been 45 minutes since I put this dough into the bowl. Look at it. It's damn near doubled. So what we're going to do to make it baguette or French bread is we are going to fold this several times to change the flavor profile. So I mixed the dough. I made a big dough ball. I put it into a greased bowl, and then I let it rise for 45 minutes before I put it right back into that bowl again. And we're going to do this process one more time. 45 minutes on the first run, 45 minutes on the second run, 45 minutes on the third run. Look at that beautiful dough ball. Put the lid back on. Go over here to the timer on my oven and set it back to 45 minutes. Because guess what? When we're done with that, 45, we're going to do the same thing y'all just saw. All right, so here is our second 45 minutes. Look at how big that has grown. 45 minutes. We're going to do this 3 times. I'm going to fold this in. A little bit of salt. Not much, just a little bit. And I'm going to fold this. And then we're going to do another 45 minutes. We've done 2 45 minutes, which means we've done an hour and a half. And I'm fixing to put us up to 2 hours and 15 minutes. And we're going to put the lid back on and watch it rise. Because let me tell you something, brother. This is rising like the son of a gun. Did you hear that squeak? That squeak is telling me that this third is working. So what we're doing is folding all of this dough that we've started with from the beginning. And it rises up in that bowl and pushes up the top of that bread that I put up, or not bread, but rags. It pushes them up. Every fold that I do with this improves the flavor of what we're going to end up with in our finished product. I've pushed down. I'm trying to make it lighter and lighter. So when this bread rises and becomes what it's going to be, this dough ball back into the bowl, we're going to give it some more time. It's going to rise some more. And then we're going to make our loaves. We need to put a little bit of gloss on top of the loaves. So the way we do that is we mix up just an egg. Once we got that egg mixed up, we're going to take this dough and we'll take this cutter. There's 1, and then there's 2. Once I've got this dough cut up into 3 different sections, I'm going to spread it out and then roll it up into a baguette. And once I get it rolled up, I'm going to roll it and make sure it's all good. I'm going to paint it with that egg. Then I'm going to set it off to the side and do the same thing to all those. I'm going to show you how I finish all that off. Spread it out. Roll it up and do what you got to do, you. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to take that loaf that we made. We're going to put that there. We're going to pull up a little bit there so that that doesn't mess up that. We're going to put that right there. And then we're going to pull up a little bit of that. And we're going to put this here. So, what we've got is 3 loaves ready to go. I'm going to take this and let that sit for about 20 minutes and let that rise. Alright, so we've got all of our loaves over here. This pan has been sprayed down. I'm going to put this here. This here. Come on. And this here. Ooh, I gotta clean that rag. Now it's time to go into the oven that has been set at 400 degrees. And if you look in the bottom, I got a pan of water so that it steams up and it makes a decent crust. All right, here we go. Let's see. How does this bread turn out? That one was trying to run way out. Let's see how these turn out. When bread comes out, it has to cool before you ever put a knife to it. I'm going to let this sit here and cool for 10 or 15 minutes. Baguettes, my way.